All right, you guys, we are back. It is me, Donovan Saadiq, the Inland Empire Informer, and I am with Professor O'Mara, who is running for Congress against Ken Calvert, and he kept his promise, and he said he would come back and let us, know how everything is going, and real quick, Professor, is it okay if I call you Professor? By the way, is that okay?
Sure, anything's fine.
Yeah. We are less than 40 days away from the election. What is your take on that?
Yeah, on the title too, it's sort of funny one. I'm not a terribly formal person. I often tell my classes on the first day, you can call me Professor, you can call me Dr. O'Mara, you can call me Liam, you can call me Hey You. I really don't care.
Right.
It's all good. Yeah, we are rapidly approaching the home stretch here. We're heading up on like 1 month away from it. So we are focusing a lot on get out the vote. A lot of our phone banking and text banking operations are just encouraging people. We're going to be switching a lot of our messaging as soon as the ballots actually drop into people's mailboxes, explaining how to do them, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to just keep up the same attacks I've been doing on social media. I keep pushing people on Calvert's record so more people are aware of who this guy really is and why we need to get rid of him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Recently, the president's taxes have dropped, and I noticed in a lot of your interviews, you being a history professor. And by the way, I love history myself. I did not know that about you. I can tell you anything about any history. I love it because history is so important because it always repeats itself if you don't know it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, those who refuse the lessons of the past are condemned to repeat its mistakes.
And thus politics. Isn't that kind of funny how, yes,
it's we don't so cyclical. Yes, one of the funny things about my particular field studying the history of ideas is that I have 1 foot in modern history and 1 foot in ancient history. And I spend a lot of time showing people that we repeat a lot of the same patterns because humans here don't change much, just the circumstances do. So if you put people in similar circumstances, we screw up in remarkably similar ways, and we have the same arguments and debates. I can show people debates happening in ancient Greece or among like Confucians in China that echo the whole liberal conservative divide in this country today.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. So, but the president's taxes just dropped. It goes back to a lot of what you were saying about how, these things happen. And it's because, like you just said, we haven't evolved, and yet this is nothing new. But what is your take on his taxes? Because here in the Inland Empire, as you know, we have a lot of Amazon fulfillment centers. We have a lot of these big warehouses, and of course, Amazon doesn't pay any taxes.
Right. Yeah. Honestly, it's a tough one because the people who support Trump and generally speaking, who support the Republican Party aren't going to care about this. It's sort of like a predisposition in a lot of conservative politics that you think the people on the top are entitled to cream off the top there. They're entitled to live well and to break certain rules. It just doesn't matter in the same way. And they view taking anything away from the rich the same way they view it from taking from anybody else. So there is a moral argument that they're making. It's just an economically nonsensical argument. The moral argument that comes more from the left about the hypocrisy of this and just how it seems patently unfair is never going to appeal to them. I think one of the things that'll help the most is if we can get people to understand what the actual purpose of taxation is. It's not about pulling money in to pay for the programs. Ultimately, it's about how to manage an economy effectively so that it grows, so it's successful, so that it helps the most people. So you're not talking about people like Trump shouldn't be paying more in taxes just so that there's more money available for programs for the poor, although it can do that. People like Trump should be paying more in taxes because that sets the incentives correctly for the economy actually to grow and people's wages to rise. If we can understand why they need to be there and from our side articulate that better to people, I think that we would sway a lot more people in the middle on it because everyone wants their own salary to go up. Everyone can understand that. And the only way the wages are going to rise for the middle class and the working class is if the very richest pay more.
Absolutely. Now, since we're talking history, in the 1950s, wasn't there like a group or a class to be rich? They were paying like a 70% income tax on the rich. And that's why the infrastructure was really good. They built the new highway systems.
Sure.
The infrastructure was great. And then fast forward 70 years, 60, 70 years, the rich now are paying what, 23% of most of their income. Now, I was just saying earlier on the show, everybody's mad at Trump. He only paid $750, whatever, more than, less than, most people do. But my take on that is, well, who makes the laws? It's going to be people like you that are going to get to Congress and,
right.
that okayed this. I mean, you can't be mad at a person for using the laws that are set there. Now, and let me codify this. If Trump evaded taxes that he was supposed to pay, that's a crime. Okay, but if you use the tax the way it was, supposed to be used, no problem. There's just no.
We just have to fix the system so people can't do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I always tell people, who set up the system? The lawmakers, the people that say, yeah, this is okay to do this, this is okay to do that, this is okay to do that. So when you get to Congress, what are some of the, you're going to be representing, an area of the Inland Empire, which is very significant here. Almost 1 million, there's almost 1 million people in the Inland Empire. What are some of the changes that you want to enact when you get to Congress?
Yeah, so you touch on several important things there. I mean, the 1% now actually pay a lower tax rate than the poorest Americans. If you factor in everything, if you factor in the local taxes and state taxes and, sales taxes and everything, it's just insane. But one thing you hit on, I want to slightly clarify, because I think it's important for our messaging on these issues. If you go back into the 50s and you look at the 91% top tax rate on the rich, or if you go into the Johnson era and you look at when it drops down to 70 or whatever, I mean, these are ultimately not what paid for all those programs. And not everyone paid all of that, because there were tons of ways to get exemptions on that. What it did was it encouraged people to reinvest in their businesses. So if I don't reinvest this money in my business, it's just going to get taken by Uncle Sam. So guess what? I'm going to give my workers a raise. I'm going to open up a new location. The tax code was set to push incentives and to raise overall wages for everyone else. And that led to much higher rates of growth in the economy. And that ultimately is what paid for all these programs. So it's not about, if you just think of it in terms of the maths, and the right can push back on this. They can say, well, look, if you add up all the billionaires, take the money here, it doesn't actually pay for much. And that's actually true. But if you set those taxes right, it affects their behavior, which helps the entire economy to grow. And higher growth rates mean that more money for all these programs. So it's a matter of changing the way we understand things. One of the problems you have, and you're asking what I would do coming into Congress, we have a lot of people in Congress that have no idea how economies function. Either they've just never studied it all, or they've literally studied misinformation on it. I mean, somebody may be a fantastic businessman. They might run a really good shoe store, and they might walk into government thinking, I need to balance the federal budget the same way I balance it for my shoe store. That's factually inaccurate. The federal budget does not work the way my budget would work in my household or any business budget. It's a completely different animal. Its purpose is to manage the entire overall economy. So I would be pushing not only legislation and proposing things and trying to work with people to change the system in a way that follows the evidence, but I'd be pushing back, whether it's in speeches on the House floor that I would get up on C-SPAN or whatever, or in the media, to try and change the way we understand these issues so that we can actually get real change.
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm really impressed with your campaign, and having a fresh face. Kim Calvert has been a representative since I was a young man, and I'm 50 years old now. So, and he's still there, doing what he's got to do. I'm not saying, people are. What do you think is the main problem with voters in general? Now, let's just talk about our area. I mean, it just seems like people, you read the Press Enterprise, or you read the San Bernardino Sun, or those publications, and we keep voting the same people in over and over again, and you hear everybody complaining about what's going on. So is it more so the voter, or is it more so the candidates?
It's actually a mix of factors, but it actually has relatively little to do with the voters. And one thing that I push back on a lot in having gotten into politics is this whole idea of vote shaming doesn't work. So I mean, Trump won the 42nd by 12 points. I'm not going to walk around there bashing Trump voters. I mean, I'll criticize Trump and his policies, but we have to appeal to Trump voters. And as soon as you say, you're dumb for doing this, you've lost that argument already. They dig in their heels, they plugged up their ears, and you get nowhere. This is just a basic psychological principle, but it's one that so many politicians refuse to recognize. And just pundits in general, or ordinary voters, we end up making things harder. We make it harder to win those arguments by alienating the people that we're supposed to win over. The bigger factors for incumbency in particular are money. When you're an incumbent, you can raise tons of cash, and that gives you a significant advantage. People will often, they bet on the horse that they know, and they shift money to them whether they need it or not. Another is the media, and the media does not do a good job of actually outlining policy anymore, because it's become, for the most part, I mean, and I'm by media here, I mean like the biggest media, like the huge newspapers, the cable television shows, that kind of stuff. I mean, 90% of what people run into comes from 5 multinational corporations, and they all have very similar interests. And they're not going to talk about things that they're not really interested in pushing. So it's less a matter of them being fake news in the sense of lying about things, and more a matter of lying by omission and leaving certain things out. It doesn't have the same edifying role that media used to have when it was more of a loss leader for bigger companies. And the last one is just the politicians themselves. And this is where, again, a lot of us do not run on issues that make sense to enough people. We run on things that fit into this broader framework of the, excuse my French here, the bullshit culture wars that just, harden people into their various partisan positions, play to your base, and then you leave half the country out of it going, I have no idea what's going on here. Like these things don't matter to me. If we can talk more about the things that matter to people, we'll get somewhere. Thinking about the Inland Empire, right? And there's a lot of more conservative areas in it. There's certainly a lot of Republican politicians in it. Use as an analogy here, a lot of the heartland of the country. Your Nebraska, Oklahoma, Kansas type states, right? They were exactly as socially conservative 100 years ago as they are now. Because the social conservatism versus more social liberalism, the cosmopolitanism, that comes from being around a lot of people. So large urban areas will be more liberal, smaller areas will not. It's just a matter of upbringing, right? That did not change for them. But Democrats used to dominate that area. We used to control it top to bottom, so much so that there was opposition to Democrats there from the hard left. Literal Marxist socialists used to take 20% of the vote in Oklahoma, of all places, right? I mean, there was a significant appeal to our politics. Why? Because we talked about issues that matter to people. We talked about kitchen table issues. We said, I want your kids to have a good school. I want you to have a good income. I don't want the banks to repossess your house. I don't want you to live in crushing debt. And people are like, okay, that mattered. We stopped doing that. And instead, in both parties, people just hardened into these cultural positions and manipulated base. That has to change.
Absolutely. Here in the Inland Empire, you were talking about the mass media. With over 1 million people, nearly 1 million people, we have no news. We have no major news. Our news is either LA, which doesn't really, it's a totally different animal than where we're at right now. Even though a lot of people have come from LA and lived out here, and don't take this the wrong way. Not that I don't care about a murder that happens in LA, but it's not really my area. You know what I mean? Or, the only thing I care about when the news comes on is I get jealous. They get 70 degrees weather while we got triple digit, so that kind of messes things up. But as far as, the pandemic has happened, a lot has, happened to change a lot of campaigning and how they're doing it. A lot of problems that they're finding across the nation is ballot harvesting and, they're predicting a lot of fraud that's going to be happening. I don't know if that's going to be true or not. What is your take as a candidate in regards to some of these really close races.
In terms of like the fraud allegation or the way we're going to be voting, you mean?
Yeah, the way we're going to be voting.
Okay. The way we're going to be voting. Oh, I have 3 cats, and they sometimes do what they want to do.
Yeah, I have 4. So
there we go. Okay, so the question of voter fraud is honestly it's the same kind of culture wars BS. There's no empirical basis for it. Something like 0.00006% of ballots were found to be fraudulent in the past 20 years. And then using like states that have had mail-only elections, like Oregon's been mail-in only for 20 years now, looking at them specifically, it's 0.00004%, which means that mail-in balloting is actually safer. I mean, they're more likely to be too aggressive and say, well, this signature is missing or this or that, or this doesn't quite match here. And people who might have actually had a legitimate vote have to then contest it to get it counted because they're so fussy about it. There's no lax standards. It's not easy to slip this stuff in. And the chances that someone is going to commit a literal felony to get 1 extra vote, yeah, it's just not common. I mean, you have to be really, really kind of messed up in the head to take those kind of chances. It's just not a realistic threat. What it is, though, is good politics if your politics is based around fear and fear-mongering.
Absolutely.
But it does present certain challenges, I think, for us. Because while there are a lot of permanent absentee voters in California, there's historically been a lot of people who receive those ballots and just never turn them back in anyway. And a lot of people are going to be receiving a mail-in ballot for the first time, that they've always voted in person. So you not only have to explain how to do it to a lot of people who have never done it before, but we have to put even more effort into convincing the people who have them, please turn them in.
Absolutely. Yeah. My ears to the street. I'm, a political guy out here running around and just looking at stuff. And they're saying basically in your race, they're not underestimating your candidacy of winning that race. I mean, it's going to be that close because a lot of people are out of work. A lot of people have seen, hey, we need to change. We're here. This is how it is. A new beginning. So from what I'm hearing is, I'm not going to say it's going to be a blowout, but there is a very good chance that you can upset Ken Calvert. And if that does happen, and the election on the national level happens to come to Congress, what would you do as a freshman congressman walking in the door?
Well, I mean, the same thing that the Congress is always supposed to do. Look at how the people voted. And realistically, this is one of the things that I try to make this point a lot for just our national politics in general, for presidential elections. It so bothered me in the last major cycle there with the Clinton v. Trump race, when everyone was talking about national polls. And in national polls, Clinton was way ahead. And Clinton's easily going to win this election. And I kept telling people, no, she might not win. I called it a toss-up because it was always going to come down to a few swing states where Trump's message might resonate more, particularly in the Midwest. And it did. I mean, all it took was a slightly lower turnout. Trump's share of the vote in those states was no better than Romney's. But if a few people stayed home, that made all the difference. And we have this tendency to just misunderstand how presidents are elected in this country. I mean, the Electoral College determines things, and that means it's realistically only a handful of states that really matter. And most Americans end up being more or less disenfranchised on it. It's actually a really unfortunate system. And it makes it harder in a lot of races, too, to encourage people to even turn up. Because in very safe states, some people just don't bother with the voting. It actually contributes to our lower overall turnout rates in this country relative to a lot of other democracies, too. But for me, I would do 2 things. Look at where the total vote is. And then we also, because of our system, we have to look at the state votes themselves.
Sure. So as a professor, a lot of the people don't understand the Electoral College. So you're basically saying big states like California, New York, Florida, Ohio, these are the states that really, Texas, that really control who's going to be the president. If you can knock those states out, those key states,
Sort of. I mean, if you could flip one away from its historic voting patterns. I mean, the last time that California went to a Republican was in the Reagan-Bush era. I mean, it was 88, I think. I think Bush Sr. got it in 88. Yeah. I mean, it's unlikely to happen. I mean, just because, it takes a long time for the overall patterns to shift. Usually, the Democrats are going to win California by such a large margin that it honestly doesn't matter. And in most states, it's winner take all, and the same way a lot of our elections are, which means that, if the Democrat won California by one vote, they would still get every single electoral vote in the state. I mean, some of them split it, but most of the ones that do that, they're tiny states like Maine. So it, again, doesn't really matter much. It's actually determined more by a handful of swing states that can go one way or the other. So Ohio is one of those. It's a large state and a swing state. Florida is a large state and a swing state. Pennsylvania is now a swing state again, and had been before, but just had a nice long stretch without one. And because Trump is running as a populist, a lot of the Midwest states that have suffered a lot from industrial decline, they have become swing states. And that, honestly, I blame Democrats 100% for that. It's because we don't talk about working class issues anymore. Changes we made in our approach in the early 1970s to target professionals handed a lot of the working class and industrial areas to the Republicans. And the Republicans are not looking out for their interests either. We still have better policies for them, but we don't talk to them, and we don't talk to them in ways that make sense.
Right. So when you're talking about that, you would be most likely talking about the corporate Democrats. Now, as a freshman congressman, and you're going in there, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the senator, you've got some corporate Democrats that like the way things are. They can care less if Donald Trump wins or loses because they get their money from the same people. But speaking of being a freshman congressman, Supreme Court nominees coming up. What is your take? Number one, first part of the question is, okay, we're in election year. They're going to vote on this, but Obama got denied the pick. So what is your take on how that went? And you're a history guy, so I know the answer is going to be great. And then number two, what do you think this nominee's pick would do and affect the Inland Empire and your district in particular?
This particular nominee has such a strong anti-labor agenda overall that it's actually going to continue to drive down our living standards. And they've stayed stubbornly low for a lot of people. I mean, less than a third of people in the Inland Empire fully make a living wage. We have a lot of stubborn poverty that for decades we've not managed to get rid of. This is not a nominee that would help us in any way, shape, or form. It would continue a kind of reactionary anti-labor agenda. So that's worth keeping in mind there. We don't have to worry as much about the whole question of like bodily autonomy or choice that comes up in a lot of discussions around the Supreme Court, because California has laws there. Realistically, and I try to make this point a lot to people, defending Roe v. Wade has actually been problematic for us. What we really should have done overall is try to win enough seats to pass federal laws protecting bodily autonomy. Counting on a thinly reasoned Supreme Court decision from the 1970s based upon an implied right to privacy is just, it's a ticking time bomb. And we really should focus on fixing the problem that way, not fixing the problem with the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court is an issue. And it's not just replacing this particular justice, too. If Trump wins again, Trump is almost certain to replace Stephen Breyer as well, which would give them a 7-2 margin in a court that has become much more heavily partisan. That's going to mark U.S. politics for many decades. So it is quite important to push back on there.
Right. Now, a lot of people think, the Supreme Court, there's only 9 seats. That's how it could be. That's not in the Constitution. That is not written in the Constitution. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he tried to pack the courts, and of course they ruled it was, unconstitutional for him to do so, because he kept getting filibustered by the Republicans in some of his programs he wanted to do during the Great Depression. So he tried to pack the courts and stuff like that. And so they, I guess, settled on 9 or something like that. So as a freshman congressman, you're going to come in there, and they say Nancy Pelosi, that's one of the tactics that they think that they should use in regards to the Supreme Court. And I agree with you as in regards to legislation versus 9 people to decide this little thing. But unfortunately, the leadership is the leadership. So you're going to be called on to make a decision on how to do this Supreme Court thing. So what would you do if once you get to Congress?
I would argue that it's short-sighted to try a tactic like that in such a hyper-partisan environment. If we were already doing work that appealed to the widest swath of Americans and we were getting past this hyper-partisan tribalistic politics, then yeah, I mean, there's, again, nothing in the Constitution that sets the number there. And it has changed before. It just hasn't changed for quite some time. And realistically, it would really help with the case backlog. They turn down a lot of cases that they probably should review just because they can only get through so many in a particular season. Putting more justices in there could help with that, because you're dividing up the work, and then, blah, blah, they share their thoughts. But if you bring it up when Congress is always on the knife edge of changing, what you're doing is you're handing rhetorical ammunition to the other side to say, look, they packed the court. And court packing has a negative connotation to it. It sounds like partisan bullshit to a lot of independents. And that's going to push people to vote for the Republicans, unfortunately. And very likely, given the patterns here, they would then just do the same thing. So if we add a couple of justices, they use it as an election issue, they add a couple more, and you've literally solved nothing. You've just dug in deeper into that tribal politics.
And in regards to the Supreme Court, them bringing up this pick in less than 40 days before an election, because remember the Garland pick, you're a freshman congressman, you get there, and the Supreme Court thing is being played out. What would you tell a Republican constituent about that tactic?
About them pushing someone in this quickly?
Well, this quickly when they denied Obama his pick.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The issue there, and this is too, it's a matter of recognizing the different political psychology that you're dealing with here, because this question of hypocrisy that is so important to a lot of liberal voters, it's just not to a lot of conservative voters. It's just not relevant. So it's not going to be an effective technique, pointing out the Garland case or whatever here and saying, so it should be. They won't care. What's better is to suggest that 1 month is too little time to actually do effective vetting and to actually have the hearings, because these are lifetime appointments. One of the things I'd like to make a kind of sort of a brief excursus on, really, make kind of an overall point. We often end up trying to solve the wrong problem. The court packing one is a good example here. So is honestly the whole question of like term limits. Because to me, term limits solves the wrong problem. The real problem is the money corrupting Congress that makes it a lucrative profession that draws in all the wrong people. All right. And by putting in term limits, you're not actually solving the corruption issue, but you might be pushing out people who really do know this, how things work, that you're pushing out people that actually have real knowledge. It's sort of like, it's sort of like ageism in a lot of industries, right? We push out people that actually have good experience in favor of someone younger. That doesn't always work out the best. So this is a good example of that. What I would rather push for the Supreme Court is an amendment to put actual terms for justices. These should not be lifetime appointments. In an environment like ours that is so hyper partisan, where either party is going to keep trying to put their own ideologues in place, it's actually to all of our benefits that the court be as nonpartisan as it was intended to be by the founders. And it's not going to get that way on its own. So if we set in basic term limits on it, then what you're doing is you're setting it up such that no one administration can replace enough of the court to ever make a difference. And if you take away that power by setting a particular term for them, by removing the ability of parties to run on changing the Supreme Court and that kind of turnover there, you change the incentives. And we can go back to thinking of simply putting competent career jurists there and not ideologues that don't really have legislative experience. At this point, a lot of people they keep proposing for the Supreme Court are people who have never actually tried cases. Why is that even coming up? What you want is the most experienced jurist in that position. We've abandoned the purpose of the Supreme Court. And I think giving them, you know, a 12-year term or a 16-year term or whatever you want to set it at, if it's set at a term and it's sort of rotating through for the individuals on there, it would prevent anybody from ever changing the court.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, you guys are listening to the Inland Empire Informer. I'm with Professor Liam O'Mara, and he is running in the 42nd District against Ken Calvert, who's been in there since Methuselah. Okay. So, but the reason why I'm bringing up a lot of this political stuff, like kind of current event stuff, is I want a lot of my listeners to understand that you understand how Congress runs. Like you were just saying, you know, jurists that never tried a case and they're being put on the Supreme Court. Here's a person who's you know, knows how Congress works and what the different positions are and all those other things. I wanted to point that out specifically, how he is up on the, but we're going to talk about the common good of the Inland Empire. We're going to switch to that real quick. California is predominantly a Democratic state. Predominantly. Between you and I just have this question. Why doesn't California as a state by itself not have universal health care?
Now, that is a good point there. The single biggest reason, and honestly, we really can simplify this one, it's lobbying. It's the insurance industry. If we were most models for universal health care do take money away from those, you know, parasitical middlemen that aren't actually doing anything to help us. Your insurance, I mean, this is something that, I mean, I wish more people understood at least a little bit. Your insurance company is not the one that's taking care of your health care. Your provider and your insurance company are two different things. One is just the bean counter that says, do I approve this treatment or not approve this treatment? And the other is the one that says, you need this treatment and we'll do this treatment. We should have no one in between us and our providers. If the provider says, dude, you need this surgery, and you're like, cool, I want that surgery, boom, you should get it. The insurance company is the one that says, gosh, that surgery is so expensive. Gonna deny that. You know, it blew me away that Republicans got away with this BS death panels crap in the 2008 run about healthcare, when we already have them. Corporate America is already filled with death panels making those decisions to kill your relatives by not providing the care. California could technically afford to do it in many ways, but California is also a bit strapped in its budget, in large part because the federal budget is so messed up. This is one of the reasons that it appeals to me more with my background to run for federal office than state office, because federal tax policy being broken is the main reason California's taxes are so high as they are. And I would rather our taxes for working people in the Inland Empire go down. I would rather we not be hit as hard, but we have to be. And not only do the taxes in California have to be high, but California still falls steadily farther into debt, specifically because the federal tax code is broken. We can fix that and should. Universal health care also works better when it's actually universal. When at the federal level is where to do this. We could do it as a trial, and we could pull it off in a way that Vermont, for example, couldn't, because at the end of the day, Vermont is a poor rural state. Vermont has fewer people in the entire state than the 42nd does. They could not afford to do it. We could, but it would also massively rack up debt, and which would help the Republicans to win elections in California. So I don't know that it's also the best thing to do. I think a better target would be to change enough people in Congress and actually get it at the federal level so that we're all in the same risk pool. That brings the costs down massively.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's one of the questions I always ask. I said, well, this is a Democratic state. If they wanted and had the will to do it, it possibly could get done. But like you said, the mass debt and things like that. But we're in a pandemic. A lot of people have lost their jobs at no fault of their own. The bills are due. The moratorium is coming up. You're the freshman congressman. I mean, you're going to get a bunch of these problems dumped right on your desk. What are some of the things you would like to interact to help your constituents in the 42nd district?
Well, good. I look forward to those problems being dumped on my desk, because I'm in this because I want to solve problems for the American people, not because I want to be a politician. Career politician doesn't appeal to me. Solving problems and making life better for people does. So we've had a moratorium on the rent that's changed here, and the rent is going to start coming due. I want that rent wiped out. I don't want people stuck with months of back rent. People should not be declaring bankruptcy because of a pandemic any more than they should be declaring bankruptcy because they got sick in the first place. We're the only country with medical bankruptcies, for crying out loud. It just makes no sense to me. None of this should affect ordinary people. So wipe out that back debt there. I want a jobs guarantee that lets us put people back to work, that makes sure that we can get people working again. There are enough projects that need to get done. We can put people to work. And if we do that, the reason to do something like that, the reason a job guarantee works, it's not charity. It's not like the nanny state handing out money or whatever here. It affects the entire economy. If Bob doesn't have a job, Bob isn't spending much money, right? If Bob is spending less money, then there's less money in the local economy being moved around. The real economy is the money circulating. So he's not going to restaurants. He's not buying a new pair of shoes. It's affecting tons of small businesses there. You put people back to work, they generate economic productivity. They spend their money at other businesses. The entire economy grows. Everyone does better, which means it literally pays for itself. So make sure we have good jobs. So wipe out the rent, good jobs. I also want a basic income, which would give people the ability to change jobs, start businesses, not have the bosses wouldn't have the same kind of power over us to say, you will take the low wage that Walmart's going to offer you, or else you could say, well, I don't need this crap job, and go look for a better one, because you don't have to worry that I immediately lose my house if I lose my job. A lot of us can't afford a $400 emergency. If you can't afford a $400 emergency, you will take any job you can get, no matter how bad it is. If we give people a little bit better bargaining power, the next thing you know, these companies are going to pay more. They'll have to. Walmart will raise its wages if you have a basic income in place in order to keep those employees, which again, more money in people's hands means more money gets spent. We've had stubbornly high poverty rates in the Inland Empire. You want to know why? We don't have the money being spent in the local environment here. A third of the people in my district commute out for work, which means they're spending tons of money outside in other areas. You build a university and better businesses in the area here, go figure. We're going to build it up. And one way to attract those businesses is people who have more money to spend. So it cuts the traffic down. It increases development in the area. Everything would improve. I mean, our entire lives would change if we just put more money in people's pockets.
Wow. And speaking of that, you've got a lot of businesses here that a lot of mom and pop stores have closed. What are some ideas that you have to revitalize the economy for the business owner? Because a lot of business owners are like, man, what's going on? So.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that constantly infuriates me too about our two-party system here is that Democrats frequently cede the ground with small businesses to Republicans. And Republicans say, I stand for small business. Calvert goes and talks to the Chamber of Commerce. I will help out small business. And then he pushes through things that screw small businesses and help only the massive corporations that are really funding him. So, yeah, we actually have better policies that would affect small businesses. So one is the one I just talked about. If people in this area have more money in their pockets, where are they going to spend it? And the businesses in their neighborhood, all of those businesses benefit. I'd also like to help out a lot of those small businesses. I mean, we'd passed that the small business loan, right, that came through in the little CARES Act. And a ton of money from that was stolen by massive corporations, by a bunch of Trump donors, by even mega churches. I mean, anybody that had $1 billion already, they said, you know what, we're going to go and get some of that money. And Ken Calvert voted against oversight for where that money went. He knew where it was going to go, and he voted for that oversight to be removed from it so that the big corporations could take it away. So to have him shamelessly say, I support small businesses and I helped pass the CARES Act that got money in the hands of small businesses, to hell with that. I mean, a lot more small businesses in the Inland Empire would have benefited if, tons of that cash had not been stolen from it. So I want things directly to help them. I want to turn any of those loans into just permanent grants. If this pandemic is still stretching on through next year, as looks likely because it's going to take a while to get a functional vaccine for it, and it is still quite lethal, it's also mutating, which people aren't paying enough attention to, which means this could be a problem for a while. So I want federal dollars to step up and give people the money to renovate their businesses directly so that they can open and function in them. Businesses shouldn't have to stay closed permanently and then risk losing everything that they had. We should be providing what is necessary to keep those businesses going.
Love it. I love that answer. I love it. In regards to the Inland Empire, for a lot of people that listen and don't really know, the Inland Empire, we are expansive in land. So we have a lot of warehouses out here, and of course, when you got a lot of warehouses, it attracts a lot of homelessness. And since the pandemic, it's not just our area, but of course, people from LA got gentrified out and they've come this way, and a lot of homeless is back and forth. So even in LA County, San Diego County, the homeless problem has taken off. People are living in their cars. It's just crazy. So, like I said, you're going to get a lot of problems on your desk, and thank God you're young enough to deal with it. But, as far as the homelessness situation goes, what ideas might you have, just looking at it as somebody who's in the 42nd district right now? I mean, you see what's going on right now, but think about the people that are homeless right now and the people that are about to lose their homes or go into foreclosure, and they're going to be homeless in a couple of months. What are some of your ideas in regards to helping battle that?
Okay, so you have two actual interrelated problems there. One is it's very expensive to live in California. And we need to lower the cost of housing overall so that fewer people fall into homelessness. We have people in the Inland Empire that are paying not the quarter to a third of your income on rent, but actually half or 60% or more of your income goes into your housing. That is completely unsustainable. And it dramatically increases poverty. So we have to address that, and we have to address the direct issue of homelessness. Homelessness is actually the easier of the two to deal with. So let's knock that one out first. If you think about people falling into homelessness, and this is people falling in just because of a short misfortune or the long-term homeless, yes, there's slight differences between them. In both cases, losing your home, like to an eviction or something, it affects your entire life. People will ask you on employment applications, have you been evicted before? They'll ask you in every other place you ever apply to live in again, have you been evicted before? Which means losing your job in a pandemic is going to mark your entire life. We need to make sure that isn't the case. We need to change the rules on that so that that's not the case. In the same way that like the bankruptcy laws were messed up, we need to fix the way evictions are handled in this country so they don't become, a lodestone around your neck, preventing you from ever getting on your feet truly again. And we need to house people immediately. This is one thing that has been empirically studied over and over and over again. If you put people in housing first, 80% of those people get their lives sorted back out, get back on their feet, they get a job, they start paying for their own place, and they're fine. You have solved the problem for 4/5 of the people who became homeless just by putting them in housing first and not forcing them to jump through tons of hoops. So this is one of the ways that I honestly agree with a lot of Republican rhetoric about like the nanny state and its obligations, but many of them were put in place by Republicans themselves to make it harder. If you have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops to get any kind of social services or to get anything done, it stops people from doing it in the first place. We need to make that easier and just solve the core problem. So house the homeless now and let them get back on their feet. The housing pricing, that's a little bit more complicated. Honestly, it's going to become a bigger and bigger issue out here because, as you mentioned, a lot of people in the LA, Orange County, and San Diego housing markets, they're looking for cheaper places to live. So they move out here. Well, when they do that, and my incumbent has benefited from that as a real estate developer, we build tons of bedroom communities. Not only are we increasing the traffic and worsening the air quality, and that San Bernardino and Riverside counties have the two worst counties for air quality in the state. And actually, they're both in the top 10 for the nation. I mean, that's just insane. But a lot of it is the logistics you mentioned and people commuting out for work. So we've got tons of bedroom communities, people move in. Well, what does that do? It raises the price of housing for everyone. And people who lived out here in an area that already did not have a great local economy are suddenly priced out. They can't afford it. So more of our people in this area are falling into housing insecurity or homelessness. And that's insane. We need directly to lower the cost. I want to see low-cost housing built on public land so that you can then sell the house to somebody, like they own a house, but not the land part. It's sort of like I did my graduate work at UCI, and they have like neighborhoods there, and people own their houses that are faculty, but they don't own the land because it's on the land of the university, right? But that lowers the cost of the house. So it basically gives people the ability to buy a starter home that's cheaper, and then if they improve their circumstance, they've built up equity, then they buy another house and somebody else buys that house. You can also make it easier for people to get home loans by creating a nonprofit lender. This would also, incidentally, save the postal service. Turn the post office into a bank and allow and basically charge a small fee to support the operation of the person doing it, but that's it. You're not charging a ton of interest on the loan. That means it's easier for people to get a home loan, or actually a small business loan too, to get themselves going and buy a house.
Right. Somebody gave a question like, well, why give them a house? That's socialism. A lot of people don't understand. Let's say I'm homeless and I'm looking for a job. I get an application. The first thing they ask on the application is, where do you live? So if you have nowhere to live, they're not going to contact you. You have no, you know what I mean? So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Let's get these people a house and do what we have to do. So
yeah, it's how short-term homelessness becomes long-term homelessness when everything is stacked against you by not having an address. It also has a significant negative impact on people's psychology. If they don't have a place that they call their own, they have a harder time solving any of the problems that might have made them homeless in the first place, which means you're again pushing people more toward long-term homelessness. It's a reason that we have higher rates of homelessness than a lot of other developed countries. And realistically, again, it's not a matter of socialism, and it's not a charity. It's a matter of thinking more holistically about the entire economy and its benefits. If you put someone in a house, they're going to solve their problems, they're going to get a job successfully, they're going to become a productive member of society again, and you're no longer supporting them. If they stay homeless, we have to shell out money every single year to take care of them. It is literally cheaper. And I'm not even kidding here. It's literally cheaper to give someone a house outright than it is to pay for what we're doing now, providing the policing and the medical services and everything else that go in with homelessness. It's just, I mean, when Republicans talk about fiscal responsibility, the fiscally responsible thing to do is to put someone in a house and let them become a productive member of society again.
Absolutely.
It's actually a conservative position.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I love the answers. I love the way that you're coming at this with logic, which is what we're lacking in Congress significantly. But the 42nd district is, it's a fairly big district. We're in the census season right now, so it's very important for those of you guys who have not done the census. Please do the census. If you are an illegal person, please do the census. You can do it. Please do it. You're talking about billions of dollars. They're going to be doing it. But let's talk about education. Since you are a professor, a lot of our problems in the Inland Empire is a lot of excuses. A lot of corporations say why they can't bring their headquarters here or they can't bring certain jobs here is because overall our education system, let's just say it's crap. Most of us don't even have high school diplomas. It's like a high school level education. So as a professor yourself, I don't have kids in the school system, but, a lot of your constituents do. What is your stance on education and what can you do to improve our educational standards?
I'll make two simple points there and bring it back to something that I would directly do in Congress. First, in terms of like primary and secondary education, your elementary and high school education, the fact that it's tied to property values and to local taxes there mean that some areas have worse schools than others. And what it creates is a kind of like classist structure. So if you already live in an area that's well off, your kids have a massive leg up in the job market, and that contributes to the long-term stubborn poverty rates in our area here. What we need to do is get back to the whole point of public education. When they originally proposed public education in this country, it was in order to give everyone an opportunity. Not handouts, not socialism again here. It's like a better opportunity to pick yourself up. If you have a good education, you're able to participate in a wider range of of things in our society. Like whether it's being a more informed voter, or having a better time getting a good job, or doing well in that job and keeping it. I mean, education is important. It's essential to a functioning democracy. So I would push funding to help out the poorer areas and break that connection to property values, so that depressed areas like ours actually end up with really good schools with people who can perform better. But another problem really relates to the question of higher education. The 42nd is sprawling. It's a huge district, and gosh, the 8th is even bigger. Like you're running along there, most of San Bernardino County, and then Inyo and Mono counties. It's massive. And you know what? We don't have universities. We just don't. The 42nd has literally 0 universities, like none, 0. Right? I don't think the 8th does either. Don't quote me on that, but I think the even larger 8th congressional district doesn't have one. But I know the 42nd district does not have a single university at all, which means you're not going to get the best jobs out here. It's going to be harder to attract people. The local labor force can't develop the skills that they need in order to do well. People end up having to commute out to go to school. They leave the area. They go down to like San Marcos, or Cal State San Bernardino, or UCR, or they go into Orange County. And then a lot of times they end up leaving. We don't get them back. So they don't bring their skills in. The jobs are never going to appear here if we don't also build an educational infrastructure. So I would push for federal funds to allow the state of California to build a Cal State in the 42nd. We could someplace like centrally located, like where there's a ton of open land, like eastern part of like Lake Elsinore, Wildomar, that long stretch between Elsinore and Paris. There's a lot of open territory where you could build a big campus, and it would actually help the entire area. It would cut down the commuting time, because students wouldn't be contributing to that traffic now. They could go locally. It would stimulate tons of local businesses in the area, because whenever you have a university, you got more kids that spend money, So there's a ton of benefits for that, and I would push hard for that to get us a university in this area to help our job markets.
Yeah, that's super important, super important. Real quick on the national level, there's been an epidemic of police malfeasance or corruption, or however you want to call it. Now we know Inland Empire, we have a lot of people that moved here from LA, which brought a lot of, LA thinking, shall I say. When you're from LA, you're just from LA, and you just move to a different place and you bring your mentality with you, right? So with all these police shootings and things that are going on, you're a freshman congressman. This is an issue that's going to be put on the table, hopefully. Qualified immunity. What is your thought on that? And just in general, I'm in the 41st district, and we know Riverside Police is second only to LAPD in their brutality when it comes to people. But as far as what's going on with the police culture, what can you do as a new congressman to help bridge we need policemen. There's no doubt about that. We need policemen, but we need to do something about the bad ones. But we can't find the bad ones because the good ones aren't telling on the bad ones. So as a freshman congressman, what can you do for the Inland Empire to help the Inland Empire bring a little bit more community policing into it? Because where I live in Moreno Valley, a majority of the police, as a matter of fact, I think all of them of the police department don't live here. They live somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, in the long run, getting more back to a community policing model makes a lot of sense to me. And I think, again, that's where it actually is a good, solid conservative value. The people policing a particular neighborhood should be from that neighborhood. They should know the people, which gives them an incentive to want to solve problems and help people, and not think of themselves as enforcers, not thinking of themselves as separate from the people that they're actually taking care of. We used to use community policing all across this country. Some areas still do. It actually is more effective at lowering crime rates and increasing respect for the police as well. The more the police come from outside the area, the harder it is to develop good relations with the community. And that simply creates a kind of bunker mentality among the police, which can actually make things hard, further those abuses that you mentioned. So community policing makes a lot of sense. And I will be pushing in that direction as a long-term proposal. What I'd like to see is more money for first responders of other types. which basically takes pressure off the police. My opponent is running a lot of ads specifically saying that I'm all for like defund the police, and I've literally never used the term in any of my marketing here. As far as I'm concerned, the police are the police, leave them alone. Provide other services that will take care of people so that you don't end up calling. Did you see that one in like Utah that just happened with the 13-year-old like autistic kid or something? I mean, the police shouldn't be called for a situation like that. They're not trained for that. It's not their fault they're not trained for it. That wasn't the job that they signed on for. So if you allow other people to do that, it actually takes away a lot of the problem areas that keep coming in there, which takes some of the pressure off. The other things that I would push are for like mandatory de-escalation training so that people aren't immediately thinking of drawing firearms. I mean, again, that might make a certain amount of sense in terms of a community. If you're just facing another citizen and your job is to serve and protect the community there, pointing your gun at someone should be kind of a last resort when you are already directly threatened. If they haven't pulled a weapon on you, why are you doing it? You know, we should, and cities that have done this, again, cities all over the country have done this and have put in place de-escalation training, like some basic psychology for it, and it has had a massively positive impact on the relations between the police and the community and on the questions of brutality in the first place. So that would help a lot. I mean, police in the US actually spend less time in training than almost anywhere else in the developed world. If you have the time to do that, if we make that a part of basic training, if we extend the training a little bit and spend more time on those nonviolent policing techniques, that could help a lot. But you mentioned the bad egg issue too. Qualified immunity never made sense. It just didn't. I mean, if someone is repeatedly being written up for something, there should be some kind of a penalty for that. It ends up being similar to, not to make a really awful one here, but again, it's never the people, it's always the circumstances. So I don't have a problem with the police any more than I have no problem with Catholic priests or the Catholic Church, but some elements of the Catholic Church have shielded abusive priests. It's not the religion that's the problem. It's not the priesthood that's the problem or the church or anything about it. It's a system that allows you to move people around without penalty. If you can change the circumstances, if you can change the system, you make a huge difference there, right? So the same thing should apply there. You know, to a priest that's offended or done something like that, he shouldn't be dragging down the entire community or affecting people's approach to the church. And it's unfortunate that it's doing that it's pushing people away from it. But because it is a very small number of people who are offenders, in the same way it is for police. So as hard as that is as an analogy, it really is. It's a very small portion of them that are bad eggs. And if you change the circumstances so they can't get away with it, we can solve that problem too.
Absolutely. Tonight is going to be the first presidential debate. I don't know if you're going to be watching it or you're going to be out there campaigning and doing, your last minute stuff. But I'm personally going to watch it later. I got some other stuff I have to do. But we're less than 40 days away. The polling shows me that your race is going to be very close, believe it or not, because people are at that point. So right now, if you had to talk to your constituents, this is your time to say, hey, this is what's going on or whatever the deal is. It's your time. Go ahead.
All right. So there's one. To drop. Okay. So there's one right away. It is going to be close. The Calvert share of the turnout in the primary was the lowest it's been since the 1990s. We had very high overall turnout here. And that's going to continue into the general because our coalition always votes more often in the general elections and primaries anyway. So we're going to sustain that energy and see it continuing there. And there is a way that the overall national situation, there is going to be, it is kind of a referendum on Trumpism as a whole. Calvert is running hard on the fact that he's backed Trump 98% of the time. That is an advantage with his base. It's an advantage with the core Republican Party where Trump remains extremely popular. But nationally, more than 3/4 of independents, I mean, it's down to like 30%. Yeah. So somewhere between, 2/3, 3/4 only support Trump now. Most do not. And if that statistic holds true in the 42nd, Calvert's in trouble. And so I would encourage people to just think about the way I'm approaching this. I want to take a data-driven approach to public policy. I want to follow the evidence. I don't want to dive into this partisan nonsense. I mean, Calvert wants to connect me to Democratic leadership or whatever. You can't. I mean, I am always going to vote my conscience. I'm going to look at the data, and I'm going to do what makes sense logically. And I want to work to improve the lives of people here. Basic economic issues. I want our cost of living to go down. I want our direct share of taxes to go down. I want more jobs and opportunity. I want better healthcare and education for people of the Inland Empire, and I will work tirelessly to do that. So if anyone wants to support us, my website is liamomera.org. There's little volunteer and donate links at the very top. Phone banking and text banking you can do from everywhere. It's just through a browser on your computer. And obviously, people can, if you can help out, if you can throw something in. One thing I've tried to push people back on a lot across the course of this race in the last couple of years is there's a sense of learned helplessness that comes in with a lot of progressive and populist campaigns, and the sense that, people can donate. He can afford to donate $10,000. So what's my $5 going to do? Why should I bother? But the price of a coffee a month given to progressive candidates adds up. And if you get a few thousand people donating the price of a coffee every single month, just one Starbucks coffee or whatever per month going in, you can win almost any House race in this country. So it works out mathematically. If enough of us step up and do that, and it doesn't hurt us much to do so. I have for many years supported House races all over the country because the Congress affects everyone. Its legislation affects the entire country. If we can step up and support those campaigns, we can get in people who are actually going to speak for us and not people like Calvert who are 98% funded by big corporations.
Absolutely. Real quickly before we go on the podcast, somebody asked, we didn't go over Daca and Dreamers. So as a freshman congressman going in there, we have a lot of people that are Daca here in the Inland Empire. We have a lot of people that are Dreamers here in the Inland Empire because of our proximity to Mexico and other places. When you get in there, what's going to be your stance? What is going to be your policy? Because again, they are one of the biggest growing demographics in California and in the nation.
This is again where I want to get in there and cut through a lot of the partisan BS and just get to the core of the problems. A lot of these quote unquote immigration crisis that we have now, and a lot of the negative impacts we have from millions of undocumented people being stuck here in this weird liminal status. They don't know whether they're going to be able to stay or not. They might have been in the country since they were 2 years old, and someone might be throwing you out to a country you've never been to. It makes no sense to me. The whole problem was created artificially. It was done for partisan purposes to create an issue around which people can run, and they'll continue to run and never solve the real problem. When we're talking about, and again, no offense to anybody here, but when we focus on things like DACA or on the Dreamers, what we're doing is we're talking about slapping a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage. We're not talking about addressing the core issue. We have to cut through the BS and actually solve this issue. The people who grew up in this country, they shouldn't be in some kind of weird deferred status. They should be able to apply for citizenship, period. I mean, if you grew up in this country, you are an American. That's that. I mean, if you don't want to be an American, that's fine. But there should be an immediate path to citizenship there, unless you have some kind of criminal issue that stops you, which would be very few overall. I mean, the crime rate amongst the undocumented is far lower than among the native born. So we should stop penalizing people for things that were completely out of their control. And honestly, that applies to a lot of the undocumented population as it is. If you go back to before we started heavily policing the border and building it up there, the overall undocumented population in the United States was tiny because most people would come across, pick some lettuce, go home. They weren't staying here. And if we had just maintained that kind of system or used a better thought out kind of guest worker system, then it wouldn't have been an issue at all. And what we did was we throttled legal immigration. We made it harder to immigrate to the country legally, and we increased economic incentives to come in illegally and overstay visas. And that is systemic. We keep blaming the people for that. we're blaming the ordinary people, and both parties are like, I want to protect the people, I want to push the people out, and everyone's and I'm just sitting here like, why don't we just fix the system so that none of this crap happens in the first place? Why don't we make legal immigration function the way it used to? Why don't we put in place a very effective guest worker program that isn't abusing people? Why don't we take care of the people who've been here their whole lives and give them a path to citizenship?
There it is, you guys, right there. Professor Liam O'Mara, that is a yes vote for Daca and Dream. He wants to solve the problem. So if that is one of your core issues, this is the person you need to vote for in the 42nd district. Liam, like I said, congratulations. Like I said, I see November 3rd is less than 40 days away. It's going to be close, but I believe you can pull it out because, you know, things are changing drastically in this country and people want change and we want new ideas and people that are not going to go in there and do the same old, same old. We want people that are going to problem solve. And I think, you know, you're going to do very, very well that night. So do me this favor. After you win, I know you got to set up your office in DC and all that other good stuff like that, but promise you're going to come back on the show and just say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing. Here's my report card, you know, and you know, here's what's happening.
Absolutely. And I will commit to everyone to be nothing like our incumbent. I will hold regular town halls in district and virtually. I will answer questions on social media. I will answer questions and letters sent to my office. I will make sure that your concerns are always heard. We're never going to agree on every issue. I am always going to be willing to talk to people and address that stuff. And that will include coming on to great shows like this and talking directly to people and being able to answer their questions. And really, yeah, again, this is going to be a close race. We absolutely can win this race. But even if it's close and we don't pull it off, I'm not going anywhere. And you know the Inland Empire is going to benefit from the census, right? Another, you mentioned earlier, everyone turned those in. Our population has been growing steadily in the last 10 years. LA and Orange are shrinking. They'll lose seats. We're going to gain seats, which means that when they redistrict these things, it's going to make it a lot easier for good candidates to run. So if we encourage more at the local level, city councils, state assembly, Congress again, and we get good people through those primaries, we can get representation that actually takes care of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there you guys go. If you're in the 42nd district, I am strongly going to recommend Professor O'Mara for the 42nd district. We need change. We need new ideas. We need new people. Like I said, if your issue is jobs, if your issue is just upsetting the system, you know, in a way that you're going to send somebody there that's going to solve the problem, here's a guy that knows what he's talking about. He's researched it. It's logic, basic, simple stuff. This is the guy. This is the guy you've been waiting for. You're talking about the guy we're waiting for. This is the guy. I'm telling you, you can't go wrong with this. Look what we've been dealing with for the last 30-something years. And look where we're at, 30 years, and here we are.
This is his, it's like he got elected in 1992.
Right.
And I mean, I'll date myself there. I turned 18 in 92. That was the first primary I voted in, you know, and he has been in there my entire adult life. I mean, no one comes up with a good idea at that point.
Right, exactly. So I'm telling you guys strongly, it's going to be close. Again, the census is very important. Legal or illegal, fill it out. You know, it just benefits us all, but what's going to benefit us the most in the Inland Empire is having leadership that is going there to solve our problems. You know, that's what we need to start doing. So a vote for Professor O'Mara is a vote for a better Inland Empire and a better 42nd district. Professor, hey, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. Best of luck. Like I said, expect my call, congratulatory call on election night. And we only wish you the best.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you guys again. Inland Empire. We'll talk to you guys later.